A leather-bound bill was placed in front of me like a verdict. $2,200. The numbers burned into my retina. Across from me, my cousin Lucas, my father's sister's son, 3 years my senior, who had looked down on me since childhood, tilted his wine glass with a satisfied smile. Beside him, Britney tapped her fingertips rhythmically, while my mother averted her gaze, watching for my reaction. "Thank you, Rachel." Lucas's voice cut through the heavy atmosphere of Belmont's restaurant. "Since you're doing so well, this much for family. That's only natural, right? Natural." That single word triggered something inside me. An icy sensation ran down my spine. I continued staring at the bill. Wagyu ribeye, 2015 Bordeaux, lobster. A list of the most expensive items they had ordered. Everything except my single cup of coffee. 3 months ago, my mother's voice had trembled over the phone. "Everyone wants to see you, sweetheart. Let's have a family gathering after so long." Now I finally understood what that meant. They hadn't invited me to dinner. They had invited my wallet. 3 hours earlier, from the moment I pushed open Belmont's heavy doors, unease enveloped me. Under the amber glow of chandeliers, they had already finished their toast. My family. The maitre d' smiled with practiced warmth. "Your name, miss?" Before I could answer, my mother's voice cut in. "Oh, there she is at last." All eyes turned to me. Dressed in black, I crossed the marble floor toward their table, the prime spot with a view of the downtown skyline. And then I noticed. There was no chair for me. Lucas draped his arm over the back of his chair, tilting his amber-colored drink. The smile on my cousin's lips arrived before his words. "This table is for family," he said without bothering to lower his voice. "Why don't you find a seat outside?" The couple at the neighboring table stopped their conversation. I could feel their palpable discomfort as they awkwardly looked away. "Don't take it that way, Rachel." Britney poured sugar-coated poison. "Lucas is just joking." It wasn't a joke. We all knew that. I dragged a chair from a nearby table. The legs scraping against the floor ruined the piano's elegant melody. My mother Helen wouldn't meet my eyes. The woman who had once been the backbone of our family was now just another vertebra bent to accommodate Lucas's posturing. After my father's death, it was Lucas who had supported my financially struggling mother. That debt of gratitude had now become the chain that bound her. "You're late," she said, as if my arrival 15 minutes early had somehow disrupted their decades-long narrative. "Traffic," I lied. The truth was I had sat in my car for 20 minutes, debating whether to come in, watching them raise their glasses together. Memories surfaced sharp and uninvited. 4 years ago, my childhood bedroom. Cardboard boxes containing everything I owned, stacked by bare walls. If Uncle were alive, he would have absolutely stopped such a reckless venture. Lucas had said, leaning against the doorframe, borrowing my father's authority. "You'll come back when reality sets in." My father had died of cancer during my sophomore year of college. His last words to me were, "You can do anything." But Lucas insisted that my father would have opposed my entrepreneurship. As someone who knew my father's actual words, I knew it was a lie. That day, I moved into an apartment so small the kitchen table doubled as my first office desk. 18-hour workdays, ramen heated in a microwave that sparked when you ran it too long, building my company one client at a time. When my company began to stabilize, I offered to help my mother financially. "You don't need to rely on Lucas, I can," but my mother shook her head. "Lucas is taking care of things. You focus on yourself." And my mother's smile then. I saw dependence on stable Lucas rather than trust in me. "Rachel, are you listening?" Lucas snapped his fingers. I straightened in my chair. "Yes." "We were talking about St. Bart's," Britney said, fiddling with her diamond tennis bracelet. "Lucas and I went in January. The Rothschilds were actually staying at our resort." I took a sip of water. The desperate phone call from my mother 3 days ago came flooding back. "It's been so long, sweetheart. Everyone misses you." That particular tone in her voice. The kind where silence speaks more than words. but loneliness is a powerful motivator. Something buried inside me still longed for a place at the family table. Now Lucas's new Rolex glinted as he gestured. A watch that cost more than my first office's monthly rent. Britney's handbag sat carelessly on an empty chair, the designer logo prominently facing outward. Their conversation bounced from luxury vacation spots to expensive purchases, with the frantic energy of performers who had forgotten their next lines. I didn't participate. I just observed. The waiter brought coffee. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, watching the theater unfold before me. "I'm splurging tonight," Lucas announced, tapping the menu decisively. "The wagyu ribeye. And let's do the 2015 Bordeaux," he told the waiter without looking up. "Life's too short for cheap food." Britney nodded enthusiastically. "Lobster for me. And maybe we should start with champagne. It's a special occasion. We should treat ourselves." One by one, they ordered the most expensive items on the menu. Conspiratorial glances exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking. My mother nervously fidgeted with her napkin, complicit but uncomfortable. Hiding a small smile behind my coffee cup, suspicion crystallized into certainty. Now I knew exactly why I was here. "So I told the Andersons," Lucas said, swirling his wine with practiced nonchalance, "that waterfront properties in this market are practically selling themselves." They signed the paperwork that afternoon. 2 hours. 2 hours of carefully choreographed conversation that flowed around me like water around a stone. Every time I opened my mouth to speak, Lucas's voice rose half an octave, drowning out my words before they could take root. "Nobody wants to hear work talk at dinner," he interrupted when I began describing our company's European market expansion. His hand waved dismissively through the air. "This is a place to talk about family matters." Family matters. As if I weren't family. As if my life's work was somehow less significant than his fabricated real estate victories. That phrase triggered a flood of memory fragments. 2 years ago at Thanksgiving. "Rachel, nobody wants to hear about your little company at dinner." My 8th grade science fair where I won first place with a self-built solar energy project, only to have it overshadowed by celebrations of Lucas's barely passing algebra grade. High school graduation where my valedictorian speech received polite applause from family, followed by excessive praise for Lucas's acceptance to state college with a C average. 4 years ago, surrounded by cardboard boxes. You'll come back when reality sets in. The memories of contempt, dismissal, and ridicule came flooding back. Family matters. As if I weren't family. As if my life's work somehow lacked the importance of his fabricated real estate triumphs. I took measured sips of water, mentally recording each slight. The waiter had refilled my glass 4 times. I barely touched my food, just observing, listening, learning. "You look good for someone who works all the time," Britney offered, scanning my face for signs of fatigue she could comment on. "Do you ever actually leave that office of yours?" Before I could answer, she launched into a story about her spa weekend. Words like rejuvenation and self-care fell from her lips with practiced ease. My mother reached across the table, her fingers briefly brushing my wrist. "It's wonderful having everyone together," she said with a strained smile. "It's been too long." "Whose fault is that?" I almost asked, but didn't. Instead, I nodded and cut a small piece of my untouched salmon. "Lucas, tell Rachel about that new place we tried last month," my mother suddenly said. "The Italian one with chandeliers made from Venetian glass." I carefully set down my fork. "Last month." An awkward silence descended, brief but heavy. "We do this monthly," Britney explained, examining her manicure. "Family dinners. It's tradition." "A tradition I was just now hearing about," I said. Understanding settled like ice in my stomach. Lucas cleared his throat. "Well, you're always so busy running your little company." The diminutive stung exactly as intended. I straightened imperceptibly in my chair. "I'm never too busy for family if I'm invited." My mother's eyes darted nervously between Lucas and me. "More wine, anyone?" Lucas seized the opportunity to shift topics. Speaking of business, he leaned forward, his Rolex catching the light. The market's been brutal lately. 3 deals fell through just last week. He looked pointedly at me. Not everyone can be swimming in success. I immediately recognized the play. The suggestion of struggle, the implication of need. That Mercedes you were looking at might need to wait, Britney said, placing a comforting hand on his arm. Such a difficult time for big purchases. She turned to me. I've been trying to find something to replace my Audi, but everything is just so expensive these days. Even the base models. My mother nodded sympathetically. Rachel has been so blessed financially with her business taking off like it has. There it was. The setup crystallized for me with elegant simplicity. The expensive restaurant, the lavish orders, the stories of financial hardship, followed by pointed references to my success. The waiter approached with practiced timing, leather-bound check folder in hand. Lucas caught his eye and nodded slightly. The folder landed directly in front of me with a soft thud. I didn't immediately reach for it. The silence stretched, heavy with expectation. Rachel, Lucas finally said, leaning back with a triumphant smile. Thanks for dinner. You don't mind, right? We figured since you're doing so well. All eyes turned to me. My mother's fingers nervously twisted her napkin. Brittany's smile was brutal at the edges. Lucas radiated entitled confidence. My phone buzzed in my purse. I retrieved it, glancing at the screen. Meeting confirmed for 9 p.m. Singapore contract locked in. Celebrating at the office whenever you can make it, Diane. A picture formed in my mind. My business partner Diane, who had stayed until 3 a.m. helping me finish our first major proposal. Miguel from development, who brought me soup when I worked through a fever to meet a deadline. Sarah from legal, who believed in our vision enough to leave her corner office at a prestigious firm. People who saw my potential, celebrated my victories, supported me through setbacks. My chosen family. The contrast was stark and clarifying. Blood ties do not automatically confer loyalty, respect, or love. Those qualities must be earned, cultivated through consistent action and mutual regard. I slowly picked up the check, examining it with careful attention. The table collectively exhaled, relief rippling across their features. My mother's shoulders relaxed. Lucas's smirk deepened. Brittany adjusted her designer purse. I set the bill down directly in front of Lucas. I am not your personal ATM. The silence that followed was absolute. Lucas's face flushed red. Brittany's mouth opened slightly, no words emerging. My mother was the first to recover. Rachel, honey, she said, her voice taking on the placating tone she'd used during my difficult childhood moments. You could help them out a little, couldn't you? We're family. Family. The word hung between us, its meaning twisted beyond recognition in their definition. In their definition, family meant I give and they take. My success becomes communal property while my struggles remain solitary burdens. Yes, we are family, I said, looking directly into my mother's eyes. Which is why I deserve the same respect you'd give to anyone else at this table. The trembling began in Lucas's hands first, a slight vibration traveling up his arms. As the reality of my refusal set in, $2,200 of carefully cultivated entitlement crashed against the seawall of my quiet dignity. I stood, gathering my purse. Not in anger or haste, but with the deliberate movements of a woman reclaiming her worth, one boundary at a time. The bill sat between us, leather-bound and imposing. $2,200 for a single dinner. Lucas stared at me, his face gradually shifting from smugness to disbelief as I made no move toward my purse. The flush began at his collar and climbed upward. Cheeks, angry crimson. You can't be serious, his voice rose, drawing glances from neighboring tables. You make more than all of us combined. I took another sip of my coffee, savoring its bitter warmth. That's irrelevant to who ordered what. Brittany leaned forward, the sweetness in her voice curdling. I didn't know you could be so petty. Her designer bracelet caught the light as she gestured. We wouldn't have ordered all this if we'd known. My mother touched my arm, her fingers trembling slightly. Maybe we can split it somehow. You take half and we'll manage the rest. The restaurant manager approached, his practiced smile tightening at the corners. Is everything all right here? I couldn't help but notice some concern. His gaze flicked between our tense faces and the untouched bill. Beneath my calm exterior, emotions crashed against each other like storm waves. Anger, disappointment, a strange unexpected grief for what this family could have been. We've been planning this dinner for weeks, Lucas finally admitted, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You never return Mom's calls. You're too busy for family gatherings. What were we supposed to do? Simply ask? I said. Not manipulate. Brittany's perfect mask slipped further. You never come to family things anyway, unless there's something in it for you. The accusation hung in the air between us, heavy with irony. She didn't recognize it. When have I ever been genuinely invited? I counted quietly. The last 3 Christmases, Dad's memorial service, your housewarming. I came alone and was barely acknowledged. My mother dabbed at her eyes with her napkin, tears swelling. We just thought you wouldn't mind helping out the family, she whispered. Things have been difficult. I didn't know how else to ask. Difficult how? I pressed, already suspecting the answer. Lucas and Britney exchanged glances. I lost my job 3 months ago, Lucas said, staring at his plate. The admission clearly cost him. The real estate market tanked and our firm downsized. He's been looking everywhere, Britney quickly added. But we have appearances to maintain. You understand that, don't you? I thought about the Rolex on his wrist, the European vacation photos Britney had posted last month, the designer purse perched proudly on its own chair. Our credit cards are maxed out, Britney confessed, her voice barely audible. All of them. The picture clarified. Maintaining the illusion of success while drowning in debt, and I was the designated life raft. Do you remember Thanksgiving 2 years ago? I asked quietly. Lucas looked confused by this apparent non sequitur. I had just landed the Westfield account. It doubled my company's revenue overnight. When I mentioned it, you said, and I quote, Rachel, nobody wants to hear about your little company at dinner. That was just a joke, he muttered, but his eyes slid away from mine. At Mom's 4th of July barbecue last summer, when I mentioned we'd expanded to a new office downtown, you told everyone I was trying to sound important and changed the subject to Britney's new car. My mother shifted uncomfortably, never having defended me against these slights. And now my little company makes me worth asking for money. I tapped the bill with one finger. Interesting timing. The manager returned, his professional demeanor intact but his purpose clear. I apologize for the interruption, but we have other guests waiting. We'll need to resolve this bill now. Lucas's frustration boiled over. Fine, you've made your point. Just pay half. Britney frantically tapped at her phone, evidently messaging friends for emergency loans. From her increasingly panicked expression, the responses weren't favorable. Nobody's answering, she hissed at Lucas. Lucas pulled out his wallet, flipping through it with growing desperation. A membership card, a driver's license, a single $20 bill. My mother opened her purse, hands trembling as she searched for a credit card that everyone knew was already maxed out. The manager shifted his weight from one foot to another. We need to resolve the bill now, please. My mother pulled out a checkbook, its cover pristine from rare use. Rachel, please, she whispered. Just this once. I thought about all the just this once moments that would inevitably follow. The gradual erosion of boundaries, the entitled expectations that would grow with each concession. You ordered it. You pay for it, I said, meeting each of their eyes in turn. I'm only responsible for my coffee. I placed a $10 bill on the table. $4 for my coffee, $6 for the server who had to witness this family drama. Lucas gripped the edge of the table. You'd really let your own mother be humiliated in public? No, I answered, the word sharper than I'd intended. but I will let adults face the consequences of their choices. What price would you put on self-respect? Looking at the $2,200 bill and the family who had plotted for weeks to manipulate me into paying it, I realized I already knew my answer. I gathered my handbag and stood up, not in anger or haste, but with the deliberate movements of a woman reclaiming her worth, one boundary at a time. I pushed through Belmont's heavy glass doors and stepped into the cool night air. Behind me, the family drama continued to unfold, but ahead of me stretched an evening suddenly free of obligation, a future reclaimed one boundary at a time. The door remained open behind me, both literally and figuratively, but only those willing to meet me on equal ground would find welcome on the other side. I heard the restaurant door slam open behind me. Rachel. Lucas's voice bounced off the parked cars. I kept walking. My key fob was in my hand, freedom just 20 steps away. Don't you dare walk away when I'm talking to you. His footsteps quickened, gaining on me. You're not part of this family anymore. The words were meant to wound, to stop me in my tracks. 5 years ago, they might have. I slowed my pace, but didn't turn around. Look at me when I'm talking to you. I turned, squaring my shoulders. Lucas's face was mottled red beneath the parking lot's fluorescent glow. Behind him, Britney hurried to catch up, her designer heels clicking aggressively on the pavement. Several diners lingered near the restaurant entrance, openly watching the unfolding drama. Ungrateful cousin. Lucas cut himself off, breathing hard. Who do you think you are? I think I'm someone who just wanted a normal family dinner. My voice remained level, a stark contrast to his escalating volume. Britney reached us, slightly breathless. My mother appeared in the restaurant doorway, hesitating. I could see the indecision in her posture, torn between her nephew and his wife, and her only daughter. Lucas ran his hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of my father that it momentarily disarmed me. The gesture reminded me of my father, one of the few sincere moments from someone who had acted as my father's proxy. Then his expression shifted, raw anger replaced by calculated concern. Mom has medical bills she can't pay, he said, dropping his voice to an urgent whisper. We wouldn't have asked if it wasn't serious. I looked past him at my mother, who couldn't meet my eyes. The final piece clicked into place. This dinner wasn't just about sticking me with an expensive bill. It was the prelude to a much larger financial request. We wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious, Britney added, her voice honey sweet again. Family helps family, Rachel. A passing couple slowed their pace, pretending not to listen. I waited until they were out of earshot. There are better ways to ask for help than manipulation, I said quietly. I offered financial assistance multiple times, but you all refused. Lucas's expression wavered for a moment. That was. Mom's living expenses, medical bills, how many times did I offer? But I kept hearing Lucas has it covered. And don't worry about it now, I continued. If Mom has medical issues, I should have been the first to know. My mother finally approached, her ruby pendant catching the streetlight. It's just some tests, sweetheart. Nothing to worry about. Insurance covers most of it. The betrayal stung sharper than a blade. My mother had been part of this scheme from the beginning, using her health as a bargaining chip. I took a deep breath, weighing decades of family history against this moment. Mom, if there are medical needs, we can discuss that privately. As I've offered before, I'm willing to help with legitimate expenses. See, Lucas interrupted, though his earlier confidence had wavered. She can afford it. I raised my hand, cutting him off. I wasn't talking to you. Britney stepped forward. We're all family here. Supporting family doesn't mean enabling bad behavior, I replied. Showing up tonight and discovering I'm being used as your personal ATM isn't how family treats each other. I turned to leave, feeling the weight of their stares on my back. Now you think you're better than us? Lucas shouted, his voice echoing across the parking lot. I stopped, considering his question. With my successful business and financial independence, it would be easy to think so. But that wasn't it at all. I glanced over my shoulder, looking at him for the first time not with pity, but as a simple fact. No, Lucas. I'm not above you. I'm just no longer in the same place as you, that's all. The simple truth landed like a stone dropping into still water. Lucas's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Beside him, Britney sank onto a nearby bench, all the energy she'd put into maintaining appearances draining away in an instant. My mother stood frozen between us, her gaze darting from me to Lucas and Britney. I could see the quiet calculation in her eyes, torn between her nephew and his wife, and her only daughter. "Rachel, please," my mother whispered, but didn't move toward me. I nodded once, accepting her choice without comment. In the safety of my car, I allowed myself one deep, shuddering breath before turning the key in the ignition. As I drove away from Belmont's, I left behind more than an unpaid dinner bill. I left behind the weight of expectations I had never agreed to carry. Tomorrow, my mother might call, or she might not. Either way, I would sleep soundly tonight. 3 months later, I stand at the wall of windows in my office, watching the city awaken below me. 3 months since Belmont's. 3 months of reclaiming what family means. The morning light catches the framed photo on my desk. Me at 22, exhausted but determined, sitting at that kitchen table that doubled as my first desk. I touch the frame lightly, a silent acknowledgement of how far I've come. "Rachel?" My operations director, Maya, appears in the doorway. "The team's ready when you are." I follow her into our conference room, where 6 faces turn to me with something I never found at that restaurant table: genuine respect. "Let's begin," I say, and the meeting flows with the practiced rhythm of people who value each other's contributions. No one speaks over anyone else. No one belittles ideas. We build together, brick by thoughtful brick. This is what I've built. Not just a business, but a community. A week later, my mother called for the first time. After awkward silences, we slowly began to talk. It was 2 months later that we started meeting monthly at a cafe. "One sugar, right?" my mother asks, sliding coffee across the cafe table toward me. I nod, watching her hands. "More stable than they were a month ago. The bookstore hired me full-time," she says with pride creeping into her voice. "The manager liked how I reorganized the history section." "That's wonderful, Mom." She hesitates, then adds, "I wanted to thank you for not giving up on me that night." The memory of Belmont's flickers between us, a ghost growing fainter each day. I'm learning too, I admit, about where to invest my energy. Last week, my mother joined us for my birthday dinner. Not at some ostentatious restaurant, but in my college friend Eliza's backyard. Eliza had strung lights across her patio and made my favorite lasagna. My mother brought homemade brownies and fit seamlessly into the evening, laughing genuinely at Jordan's terrible jokes and listening to Kim's stories about our early business struggles. For the first time, I saw her without the shadow of Lucas and Britney looming over her. Lucas got a job in Hartford. My mother mentions casually as we walk through the park the following Sunday. Something in sales. Smaller salary, but he seems lighter somehow. I nod, not surprised. We've kept our distance, but through my mother I've heard snippets. Britney's Instagram no longer features designer labels and exotic locations, but home-cooked meals and local hiking trails. Their fall was hard but necessary. "He asked about you," my mother adds tentatively. "When he's ready for an honest conversation, he knows how to reach me." I've made peace with the fact that some relationships heal while others remain broken. Both outcomes are acceptable. That evening, the aroma of garlic and rosemary fills my kitchen as friends move around the space with comfortable familiarity. My mother arranges her homemade rolls in a basket, contributing rather than expecting. As Eliza pours wine generously, we gather around my table. Not the expensive mahogany Lucas would choose, but warm cherry wood that bears the gentle scars of dinners past. As conversations overlap and weave together, I realize what I've created here. Not the pale imitation of connection that lived in that strange restaurant meal, but something authentic. These people see me not as a resource to exploit, but as a whole person, flaws and strengths alike. Later, my mother and I walk along the shoreline near my apartment. As the sunset paints the water gold, when she stumbles on a rocky patch, I offer my arm without hesitation. "I'm glad we found our way back to each other," she says softly. I help her navigate the uneven ground, supporting without carrying. "Family isn't who you're born to," I tell her. "It's who you choose to become together."